Now, the major story tonight is a briefing by the Cooperative Governance Minister, Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, who's today proclaimed a date for the local government elections in October, but that does not mean that the country will in fact go to elect local councils in October, because currently outstanding is the issue around the IEC going to court because a commission report that it got from retired Deputy Chief Justice Nkosazana found that currently, under the conditions of the COVID-19 pandemic, elections held this year would not be free or fair. The conditions are not conducive for a free and fair poll. Let's get you an update then with the Cooperative Governance Deputy Minister, Obed Bapela, joining us live on News at Prime. A very good evening to you, Deputy Minister. Thank you for your time. So the proclamation of the date today by the Minister is very much a technical issue, but we're still not clear on whether we will indeed have an election, are we?
Well, good evening to you and all the viewers of Newzroom Afrika. And indeed, the announcement for the proclamation is what is dictated to by the Constitution, that the minister ought to declare the term of office of the current term of local government ended yesterday on the 2nd of August. And then today we are beginning the first day of the remaining 90 days before the elections could be held, because the Constitution only gives us only 90 days to run the next elections at the time of the expiry of the term. So therefore we have to then do the proclamation that the elections will be held on the 27th of October, as the minister announced this afternoon. But the IEC has already indicated that they will go to court to ask for the postponement of the election based on the report, as you said, by the retired Chief Justice Nkosazana, who had concluded after public hearings, submissions, and also from health and scientists around this pandemic and the conditions that people are still going through. And he, in the report, has suggested the elections be held next year. But then obviously it's only the courts then that can then determine on that particular issue and the submission. But the minister, constitutionally and rightfully so, had to proclaim. But also it is helping the IEC then to go to court to say, with the pronounced date of the elections, we are therefore asking based on the following report. Because if there was no proclamation, they will not be able to go to court on what basis you postpone, what is it that you are postponing, which is not proclaimed. So the proclamation will then also begin to then determine whether the report by the retired judge is as convincing that these elections cannot be held or not.
All right. So the proclamation today by government also means that the IEC has to close the voters' roll by midnight tonight, as I understand it. What are some of the other immediate responsibilities of the IEC in the interim?
Well, it is voter registration, but secondly, also there's a timetable for the registration of the candidates, which is supposed to be the end of August. All parties should have submitted who are these candidates that they are going to be submitting for consideration. And then the IEC immediately after that, during September, they were supposed to then check whether all the candidates do not have criminal cases and clear that 4,000 or 8,000 candidates within that particular period. And then so that then the candidates are cleared of any criminalities, and then there are people, men and women, who are credible in society to can stand for elections. That includes those that are submitted by the parties themselves, but also there will be independents who also want to participate in the elections to go and test their ability to be contesting. So that work out to be concluding by end of September, so that by October the 27th, then we have elections. And I think the program is as tight. That is why with the COVID and the regulations, now we're on level 3. We just come from level 4, which has prohibited public meetings for many political parties. And that's the situation that unfortunately we find ourselves with this pandemic and the COVID-19.
And the difficulty, Deputy Minister, is that this is uncharted territory for the country. Never before has there had to be an application for elections to be deferred, right? In your submission to the process that was chaired by the retired Deputy Chief Justice, you spoke of a 2021 elections disaster management contingency plan. Is that plan already drafted, and what would it seek to do?
Well, the draft is there, but then the country was locked down for the past 2 to 3 weeks, 4 weeks in all, and quite a number of activities were not allowed to continue to conclude on some aspects. But then the IEC also had to postpone the voter registration weekend, which was supposed to be this weekend itself, on the basis that the report by the retired judge was looking at issues with the scientific evidence. But the minister had to proclaim a date, and I think it is within the constitutional aspects that the constitution, when it designed, didn't even anticipate that the world will be faced by this type of pandemic.
And why is that, pardon me, Deputy Minister, why is it that in the drafting of our rule of law, the constitution itself, there wasn't any provision made for a moment as urgent as this? Because think about it, beyond the pandemic, there could have been other factors that could have forced perhaps natural disasters that could have forced the need to postpone an election.
Well, remember, when we are running elections, other natural disasters will be heavy rains in certain parts. It has never been the entire country. And then those dates will then be shifted to a period where then the rain will have subsided. It could be other natural causes, but they've never hit a country as a whole, not the continent and not global. The last time the global situation happened was in 1918 to 1920. So the design of the constitution, probably we never anticipated that there shall be such a pandemic, and here we are caught up. And I think going forward, the constitution ought to then be looked at that issues that in future, if such calamity and the pandemic is, then we'll then have to then develop such losses. I don't know what the court will be saying. Obviously, one can't be preempting in the postponement, whether the court alone just postpones, or there might be a provision that says Parliament within so many days must amend the constitution and insert in a clause. Those issues will then depend on the arguments in court.
But, for example, I want to pick up on the point that you made about if the court were to say, take this to Parliament and have a constitutional amendment passed, that would likely be very tricky, because as things stand, the parties in Parliament are not in agreement on a postponement of elections.
Well, parties are not in agreement, but the pandemic is forcing us. We don't know. There's a call, a situation that might arise also in October with the fourth wave. We don't know whether it's coming or it's not coming, but the vaccination program is now definitely happening. And then what Justice Moseneke was saying was that by February next year, 2022, we might have a herd community of quite a number of population, 60 to 70% of the population having gone through vaccination. That might also then begin to relax certain activities, to be opening up, and then we can then have what we call free elections, still have elections, but just delayed by a few months, and then have them free and fair so that everyone can fully participate. But parties will have their own arguments, and then those arguments probably they may also approach the court to go and argue against the IEC, those who agree and those who say the election should be postponed and not postponed. And let's just leave that to the courts for now. But yes, in Parliament there won't be any agreements, but Parliament exists also by persuading each other. Political parties might then have to engage, participate, look at what is happening, the death toll, the infection rate, all those issues are evidence for everybody to see for themselves.
Deputy Minister Obed Bapela, the Deputy Minister for Cooperative Governance. Good to speak to you, sir. Thank you.